All right. We're live. Everything's good? Yes. Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen, How Great Communities Make Great Games. I'm your host this afternoon, Community Content Manager Jared Huckabee. And joining us today are a panel of Star Citizen developers, community luminaries, and engagement directors who are here to talk a little bit about Star Citizen, how we interact with the community, how we share information, how that community then influences our design decisions, basically the symbiotic relationship between you guys and us in the most successful crowdfunded anything of all time.
Yay.
So, for introductions, immediately to my left here, we have Director of Community Engagement, Online Strategy and Spaceships, Mr. Ben Lesnick.
Hello.
Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about what you do?
A little bit of everything. I've been with Star Citizen since before the very start. I helped plan the original campaign, and I've been doing what I can ever since then, from helping come up with spaceships to figuring out how to sell them to interacting with the community, and it's been a heck of an adventure. It's going to be an amazing book someday.
Next to Ben is Lead Community Manager out of our Austin, Texas studio, Mr. Tyler Wicken.
Hello.
And Tyler, not them, why don't you tell me what it is that you do?
You know, I don't actually. You put me on the spot like that. No, I mean, honestly, it's common in community that it kind of changes on a day-to-day basis. You fill the gaps, what needs to be done. You wear a lot of hats, and so.
Tyler's the reason.
Literally, I wear a lot of hats.
Tyler's the reason no one here is holding a pitchfork or a like flaming something.
Yeah, well, not yet at least. Yeah.
Immediately to his left, Community Manager out of our Los Angeles studio, Mr. Tyler Nolan.
Hello, everyone.
Tyler, what do you do?
Thank you. A lot like Tyler, we do a lot of community engagement, social media stuff, interacting with people on the forums, and
Just move it closer.
just general community management stuff. It's a lot of engagement and talking every day. I talk to you guys and backers from around the world and hear their feedback and make sure that the development team is listening to you guys.
Immediately to his left, wearing a sweatshirt for the very first time, it would seem, character concept artist Jeremiah Lee.
Hello, my name is Jeremiah Lee.
And what does a character concept artist do?
I concept characters.
You recommended bringing him.
Oh yeah.
We asked for the best, they gave us Jeremiah Lee.
Yes, I'm ready. I've been working for CIG for about 2.5, 3 years now, and I've designed a lot of the armors that you see in the game, also the clothing, and aliens.
Yep. And last, certainly not least, no stranger to Spectrum, our communications platform, if you've ever spent any time on it, technical designer Matt Sherman.
Hey, everyone.
Did you say typical designer, Matt
Typical
Sherman?
designer,
sound like
Matt Sherman. Matt, what does a
kinda
typical designer, a technical designer do?
So I get to work with like some of the pitch concepts that Ben will come up with for ships and actually try and plan those out into what the ship actually is going to be, what it does, and then get that working in the game.
All right. So, right off the bat, what is Star Citizen? We always like to assume that some of you have never heard of Star Citizen before. So instead of me up here to explain to you what the project is, we're going to hear directly from our founder and CEO, Chris Roberts.
Star Citizen is an epic first-person experience spanning hundreds of solar systems where players can fly highly detailed spaceships, battle on foot through massive space stations, explore life-size planets, and discover adventure in an ever-expanding and changing galaxy. It's a game I've always dreamed of making, and with a community of over 1.6 million, we are well on our way to making the dream a reality. Star Citizen is currently in alpha, which means we are still creating the technology and designs that will allow the game to come to life. Since game development can take years, we are inviting those who have backed the game to help provide feedback throughout the process. We have broken the game down into several modules to release to the community to provide early testing. If you have a Star Citizen game package, you can start playing today. Arena Commander is a dogfighting and racing simulator that lets players test out flight mechanics. Our FPS game mode, Star Marine, puts players in head-to-head ground and EVA combat. The biggest module is the Persistent Universe, known commonly as the PU. You can fly solo or crew up your ship with your friends to explore dogfighting ships or battle on foot. This represents the first glimpse of what will ultimately be the massive multiplayer Star Citizen universe. So what happens from here? Well, we're continuing expanding the PU by adding more planets and even more star systems to explore. Our new dynamic mission system will allow players to choose their own path in the universe, from bounty hunters to space pirates, traders, mercenaries, miners, explorers, and many more. As all these new pieces begin to fall into place, the universe of Star Citizen will really start to come together. But even then, it will only still be the start.
Without victory, there can be no survival!
We're also hard at work on Squadron 42, a separate single-player experience set inside the universe of Star Citizen that will put you face-to-face with an unbelievable cast.
Fire up!
Star Citizen is an ambitious game. We're working tirelessly to build a fully immersive experience where players will be able to have the adventures of a lifetime. One universe that can be a home for all gamers. One that will continue to grow and evolve. And we're thrilled to have you all along for the ride. And I'll see you in the verse.
Thank you, Chris. I can tell you, as someone who has to spend all day, every day talking about Star Citizen, it's nice to just have a video and be like, that's what it is. We should keep that around on our phones when people ask. All right, so Star Citizen's central conceit is open development. We're a crowdfunded game. We went to you guys, the backers, the Space Sim fans out there in the world, and said, hey, please enable us to build this game on our own. And in return, we will take you on the journey with us. If you followed Star Citizen from the very beginning, I often joke that you've already got like a 200-level college course in video game development if you've been with us for the 5 years so far. And that's because of our 3 pillars of open development. Basically, it's you build an immersive first-person universe, you build worlds to discover, and 100% crowdfunding. All those things together means we are trying to build basically a life away from life. It's a place where you can come and live out your fantasies, live out your dreams, and realize that outer space adventure that we don't usually have the opportunity to in real life, unfortunately. Fund NASA, please. All right, Star Citizen by the numbers. We are currently at over 1.8 million registered citizens on our website. We've distributed over 1.4 million virtual ships. We are the most successful crowdfunded anything of any kind of all time. We've raised over $161 million at this point. Our forums have over 5 million posts. We've produced on YouTube over 550 professionally produced videos. That number is actually way inaccurate. We are actually over 1,070 as I looked this morning. So that's not even half.
Slightly.
We have backers in over 180 countries, and we have over 44,000 player organizations in the game, what you might call guilds and other games, with the largest one over 12,000 members. So the question that we get most often when talking to folks is, what is open development? Everybody's got their own idea of what open development means. To us, open development is about sharing, engaging, and building with your community. There's basically you, the community, we share. I don't get to do motion graphics very often.
This is very fancy.
Engage.
You should be proud of yourself.
Then we get your feedback, and then we incorporate it. So basically, it's a nice symbiotic relationship that's been going on for 5 years strong and doesn't show any signs of slowing down anytime soon. Now, the objectives of open development. Obviously, it's to build awareness by sharing the process. For those first couple years, Star Citizen was an idea and a couple people who want to make the idea. So when you're talking about sharing the process, we were sharing ideas in those very early days. Some have already been made into a reality. Some we're still continuing to make into a reality. Some we've had better ideas along the way. That's all part of the video game development process. We connect with fans by giving them a voice early in the development. We strengthen your vision by incorporating direct feedback. We've got Matt Sherman and Jeremiah Lee here, who we'll talk about it a bit later, who spend lots of time in our forums, in our integrated chats, getting direct and immediate feedback from our backers. We align our strategy by engaging with our audience. Lots of times when you're trying to figure out what to prioritize first, we'll often decide, this is a much more engaging opportunity if we do this now than if we do this other thing. So that can guide our principles at times. And then, of course, mobilizing your fans to help you realize your project goals. Pretty self-explanatory. Tools of open development. We do Twitch live streams. We're at TwitchCon here. We do the 1,070 YouTube videos. We provide weekly and monthly reports, and of course, we utilize social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and they're all designed for slightly different audiences.
I would add personal engagement to that. We do things like Bar Citizens. We go out and talk to people. We invite people into the studio. I think that's a really important way to get the sense of your audience.
Absolutely. Right, so community content, what value does it add, and what is transparency? The value cannot be understated. Like I said, for those first couple of years, we didn't have a game. We're not operating in a traditional model. We didn't work in secret for 6 years and then tell the world Star Citizen is a thing. So we have all this stuff to show. We came to the community with an idea and some people. So having these daily, these weekly, these monthly reports is our best way of communicating the type of game that we're trying to build.
I would say there's also sort of another barrier. At the very start of the process, it's a game that couldn't have happened under the normal process of going to a publisher and saying, oh, we want $20 million to make this specific game. Publishers say, okay, but it's a space game. Nobody wants space games. So it's really that initial interaction with the community that makes it possible in the first place.
Yeah, it's almost hard to imagine now. 5 years ago, nobody wanted to make space games. The landscape has changed so much in just the last 5 years by virtue of our crowdfunding campaign, by virtue of Elite, No Man's Sky, and so many of these other games. The resurgence of sci-fi and space video games lately has been tremendous.
I have been involved in so many pitches with Electronic Arts to try to bring back Wing Commander internally, and every single time it's like, can you do it for Facebook? And this lets us do the game people actually want to play.
Yep. And so the primary way that we interact with the community in this time and over the last 5 years is through our video content. We put out, on average, 15 to 18 videos every single month. There was a period last year where we were putting out a video on YouTube every single day of the week. It's in one case it can seem overwhelming, but one of the things that we try to do is we try to recognize that not all people like the same things. Now, while everybody who's backed Star Citizen, you can assume that they like space games, even within the people who like space games, there are many different subsections of people with various interests and whatnot. So we have a variety of shows that all are aligned to specific interests. And one of the side effects of that is there will be people like, oh, I don't like this show, but I love this show. And that's the idea. The idea is that there should be something for you, but not something. But Lore Makers might be your favorite show, but this guy's like, Lore Makers isn't for me. I like Bug Smashers, and this person over here is like, well, Bug Smashers is too technical. I don't like it. Well, Citizens of the Stars is their favorite. That's the idea. It's developing content that isn't bland, that isn't generic, that's targeted for specific segments of the gaming population. And those are some of the examples, the different shows. We're going to go into them in a little more detail here. Citizens of the Stars, basically, we start our week. We start our week with Citizens of the Stars. Citizens of the Stars is our weekly look at the content that our backers create. Now, this show was born out of, we have our internal Skype groups, and where we're constantly sharing things. Oh, look what this person did. It's a thing that developers do. It keeps our batteries charged. It keeps our excitement for the project, renewed day in and day out. When we were sharing so much stuff internally that our backers and our fans were creating, we decided to share that back with the community. And this is a show focused entirely on the things that our community does for themselves and with each other. And it's been going on for 40 weeks now, 50 weeks. It's one of our newest shows, and it's one of my favorite things that we get to do. And it's a great example of the type of show that you wouldn't see another video game company do. And to me, that's always the litmus test. It's like, if this is something EA would do, or this is something Activision would do, it's like, all right, we'll look into it. But if you can sit there and say, nobody else would do this, now you've got my attention. That's something that sets Star Citizen apart. Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy, a show focused on the writers of our game. Now, I assume you're here at TwitchCon, many of you are video game fans. I usually like to ask people, name the 3 writers of your 3 favorite video games. And the most I ever get is the guy who wrote Mass Effect. I get that name quite often. But after that, you generally hear silence. But the majority of our backers can name 4 writers of our game and whatnot, because we have a show focused on them, and not just the story that they're creating, but the reasons that they make the story decisions that they've made, the science that informs those decisions. I mean, it's a show designed for the RPers. It's the people that want to make engaging characters that will exist intrinsically within our game universe. This is the show for them, and so they can learn all about the intentions and science and story of our game while we're still making it. Bug Smashers. We took a gameplay programmer, stuck him in front of a webcam, and had him fix a bug for 30 minutes. It was a lark, and it turned out to be a huge hit. People loved the frank, direct nature, watching him, pull his hair out live on camera while he was addressing the bugs, the same bugs that our backers are experiencing when they play the game. So it works to not only reassure you, as we are a game that's in development, so there's still plenty of bugs and stuff to deal with. They see that they're not alone. They see that they're not crazy with how frustrating it is, and they watch the process of it getting fixed. And he does it with humor and good nature. And one of the things one of my favorite things that we do, because no other company would come close to doing it.
And it's one of those things that lifts all boats, because we kind of, as we went into this, one thing we found very, very quickly was people don't necessarily understand what goes into fixing a bug. Mm-hmm. We're all frustrated by, this is broken, and everybody, why doesn't my favorite developer fix this or this or this? And this shows you how we do it and why it's harder than just that. And it's that sense of educating the community, even though it's not necessarily good news that it takes 15 hours to fix some small thing. Now you understand the process the same way we do. It arms us both.
Yeah, and we've had several episodes where he's trying to fix a bug and then discovers 3 more.
Yes.
He's like, well, we have content for future episodes now.
Yep.
And that's the nature of it.
Mm-hmm. And then our flagship show airs every Thursday. This is Around the Verse. This is a weekly documentary feature that we produce. Anywhere from 20 minutes to 60 minutes every week, depending on the content that's available that week. It is a live, behind-the-scenes look. We put cameras in our conference rooms where the actual game directors are going back and forth about how to prioritize this feature over that feature. We do behind the scenes interviews with the stars of our show. There's Mark Hamill, stars of our game. Mark Hamill down the corner.
He was definitely the star of that episode.
He was the star of that episode. Yeah. I think Mark Hamill's the star of anything he's in, except for Force Awakens.
That's fired.
Fight me.
We spent that whole movie waiting for him.
I mean, he'll still have more
So-
lines in Squadron 42 than the new trilogy. So.
Yeah. And of course, hosted by our founder, chairman, and CEO, Chris Roberts himself. Right there. So you see from the guy at the top telling you why these things are happening, what's coming next, and interacting with the community whenever possible. Around the Verse, even if you're not a fan of the game, I think there's stuff in Around the Verse it's
educational.
Yes, like I said, it's the primary source of that 200 level college course. And by the time we're done with this, you'll have your master's degree in video game development if we're doing our job right. And then on Fridays, we have happy hour. Happy hour is where most of the people that you see here on this table, we get together and we just hang out and chat with the community. Whether it's answering questions live on Twitch, so they can post them immediately and see our raw, unfiltered answers about things. We design creatures live with input from the backers. One of the most requested features for years was that we add a space whale, and I didn't totally agree to it, but we did it. And we designed a space whale live. We put things up for votes. We even did an episode where we use project managers and producers to create a schedule
For a space whale.
for a feature, and it was one of our most popularly viewed segments. It's those kinds of things that you'd never see EA or Activision. Not to keep picking on them, they're just the ones that are on the top of my head right now.
They deserve it this week, I think.
But I'd even say, like, with that, with the production breakdown, the greatest thing about that, even for me as a designer, is like, yeah, those are a lot of the things that most people don't really ever get to see, just how many little subcategories where it's like they would go into one thing on the space whale and it's like, well, okay, let's start bumping back everyone's schedule. Let's bump back the audio guy's schedule, the artist's schedule, the designer's schedule, the programmer's schedule, because everything just systemically impacts everything else. And so it's like, hey, this is what one small request really can do and just snowball downhill.
Now, you've worked for other video game companies before, Matt.
Yeah.
Were you ever asked to appear on weekly live Q&A live streams where you're put on the spot by the backers and...
No. At most, it was occasionally like a video segment before a product release for a behind-the-scenes DVD, where it's just some more high-level stuff. But this is a very different structure where it's just like, yeah, let's go into all these details that are normally either glossed over or sort of sidestepped, because it can sometimes take a lot to initially wrap your head around, hey, this is the crazy of games development. It never goes smoothly.
And what do you get from appearing on shows like this? What's in it for you? I know what you do for us and for the community, but what do you come away from the shows with?
Well, part of it for me was, before I even came to CIG, I was just also a big super backer, so I'm still happy I've got a 4-digit backer ID. I had the old metal cards and all that, so it's just supporting the project, because it's been since, 02, 03 when Freelancer came out, since there's been a giant-ass space world to explore that's worth spending the time in, that rewards enough aspects to the gameplay. So just building that up.
And then, of course, in addition to 15 to 18 videos every month, we still have a variety of posts on our website. Every week starts with a This Week in Star Citizen, where we lay out all the activities for the week, because we like to rotate them and keep them up, shake things up, try to keep this journey that we're on, interesting. We support and fund the game by doing concept ship pledges for concept ships. They come complete with Q&As where we announce a ship, we share some info, we show some pictures, and then we spend a week collecting questions. Then we do follow-ups. Our lore team puts out a weekly post where they expand the lore of the game. In addition to the video that they're already doing, they're building storylines within the game that you will see pop their heads up in game missions, from time to time. Monthly reports where, in addition to all this stuff, we do a detailed, almost like a shareholders breakdown of what every single studio has been doing for this month, the challenges that they faced, the triumphs that they achieved. It's just, in my opinion, it's an absolutely unparalleled level of open development, and information sharing with the community. And of course, in addition to that, we have our different social media platforms. In addition to Twitch and Facebook and stuff, we have our own thing called Spectrum. If you're familiar with Discord or Stack, it's our own version of that. That's coming soon, complete with in-game integration. It's a place to directly interact with our backers, with our fans, ask questions. You will often see Matt Sherman in there, who literally he takes a couple of minutes away from his work and says, "Hey, what about this? What do you guys think about this?" Gets the feedback immediately and then goes back to work. It's an amazing way to get that instant return on feedback. And then, of course, Twitch. The importance of Twitch cannot be understated. In a lot of games that are developed, that are finished, it's more about marketing. It's more about, streamers play our game and they share our game, other people see it and whatnot. But we actually spend time, Tyler, Jeremiah, Matt, myself, we'll spend time in Twitch chat answering questions, collecting questions, looking at the stuff that our Twitch streamers are struggling with and having trouble with, and then going back and making notes and saying, okay, maybe this should be a bigger priority than we thought it was. The virtue of Twitch in our development process cannot be understated.
Yeah, actually, just I think 2 weeks ago, I ended up jumping into a few of our other streamers. I don't think I see him here, Uber Nerd and Crucian Gaming's channels, because we're doing a bunch of UI overhaul for all of our ships, and so I was updating our 300 series and our Mustang series. And once we started a big part of our conversion to our new item system 2.0 thing for our upcoming patch, a lot of our old UI just went away, and so it was going to be more work to try and get a Mustang loaded up in the build with the old system versus just, oh cool, you're in the PU right now, do you have this ship in your inventory? Awesome, can you load that up for me? Fly around, just take a look around the HUD. So being able to get almost some live regression of bugs, which is a very helpful thing, where it's like, is this just something someone saw at random, or is this something we can reproduce 100% of the time? It's insanely helpful.
Now, Jeremiah, most projects, be it a movie or video game, concept art's not seen until after the thing has been released in an art of book.
That's
right?
correct.
Your work is getting showcased oftentimes even before it's been implemented in the game. How does that change your perspective on, how does that change your work?
Well, I've worked on a lot of different games and film and TV shows before I started working at Cloud Imperium, and sometimes my art would never be shown, and I wouldn't be allowed to put it in public. And there were moments when I would finish a concept and then they would release it the day of. There were instances of that. So it's very interesting for me. It was kind of, I felt like I was almost being exposed, like a weird feeling. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, this is my art, and it's like, oh, it's out in public. Okay, all right, you get the go. So it's, but thus far, I think a lot of our backers, like on Reddit and Spectrum, even on Twitch, or when we throw it on ATV, I can kind of like see the comments and everything. They all love it, and as time passed and I saw the reaction of the fan base, it kind of became normal for me, and I was kind of used to and kind of starting to enjoy the almost spontaneous, like, oh, here's the art. And I think there were some times when they would walk over to my desk and be like, what art do you have? I'm like, oh God, this one, all right, go, okay, go. I was like, okay, all right, there, all right.
I'll never forget.
Put up on the Twitter today?
What?
No, just the weekly question almost of when one of the Tylers will walk around. It's like, is there anything we can put up for the Twitter today?
Oh, yeah. We got one of those questions before, too.
Yeah. I'll never forget, I gave a studio tour once, and we had a backer come into Mark Skelton's office, for those of you who remember him. And he was working on the Buccaneer concept art, and the backer goes, oh, did you make that? And Mark Skelton's like, yeah. And he goes, you might want to revisit it. So we moved on, and Mark Skelton goes, open development is tough sometimes, because it is. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, you see a AAA title get announced, and it's just like, look at this grand game with this beautiful trailer. You know, it's coming this Christmas in 3 months. And for us, we operate with no curtains, completely exposed. Yeah. So it's very unique. I think that's why we have developers here on a community-focused panel, is because it's kind of a completely different process for everybody, not just community, but the entire development team is subjected to eyes.
Yeah, I mean, we also, like for instance, recently in the recent ATV, we showcased for the very first time the new Legacy Heavy armor for the Outlaw, right? Mm-hmm. And Josh Herman and I, the first thing we did, we shouldn't be doing this. First thing we did was we opened up 5 Twitch channels watching ATV. And we're like, well, what are they saying? And we had our own little personal private mess. We were like talking to each other. And we're like, oh, this guy likes it. Oh, this guy doesn't like it. It's like, he doesn't like this, but it's so dope. Oh, I don't like this Twitch streamer anymore.
That's a super unique thing that you don't get at other studios. Like, do you think, like, sorry to hijack this, but I have a question. Like when you go to your next studio, right? We're not going to be at Cloud Imperium for the rest of our life. Maybe we will. Who knows? But when you go to your next studio, do you think that it'll be weird having to readjust to the traditional publisher process?
I think so. Well, what kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about. The unique thing about kind of our process is when we show concepts early, or when we show high poly images, and we get an instant reaction from the community. The art director and a lot of the senior artists will look at the feedback and will take notes on like, what does the overall community think about this suit or this kind of art direction. If it's something that we're like, no, we have to go with this direction, we won't change it, then yeah. But there were multiple times when we're like, maybe this guy has a point, or like they'll go through Reddit and be like, oh, he actually brought up a very interesting idea. Maybe we should incorporate that into it. So getting feedback early on kind of helps us get a more, a better product.
Totally.
Rather than like most games or a lot of films, right? Like who does this? I do this all the time. Like you go to a film, right? And then there's a scene, and it's absolutely terrible, like visually. Like, why is it like so shaky cam, or like, why is there so much lens flares, right? They can't take it back. It's already the final product, and we just judge it as the final product. But the unique thing about our game is you can kind of see a sneak peek of it, and then you guys rage with pitchforks and with those torches, right? Try to burn the house down. We're like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that. And then
The difference between a learn to draw nub on after Mass Effect Andromeda has come out and a learn to draw nub, the week after ATV, it's a much greater weight when it's when you're commenting on our stuff, because we're still making it.
Yeah.
So you start to go, oh, okay, well maybe I can do this a little differently.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is a little weird though, because sometimes over the weekends I might get, I can talk about it. Like I worked on some films for Warner Brothers, like on the
I
weekends.
wasn't sure where that was going.
Yeah, but like, I'm not going to say exactly what, and sometimes it was weird because I'll send them a piece of drawing, a concept. I'll send them a concept, and then I'll just never hear from them again. And then I'm just like, well, okay, maybe, I guess it was good. But like a lot of the film projects I worked on, they're like, this is good, move on, check. And then a couple years later, the movie comes out, and then I get phone calls. And it's like, I heard you worked on this movie. It was absolute dog shit. Okay, oh shoot, can I say?
You can say it once.
The views and opinions of Jeremiah Lee do not represent those of Cloud Imperium Games,
Dog poop.
Industries, or its subsidiaries.
Dog poop.
I
Keep it classy.
Are you guys sharing a mic?
Yes, we are.
sharing mine.
Yes, we are.
One of the great characteristics about CIG is our presence in the community, and just kind of always being available. You can see us on Spectrum or on Twitch, but it comes with challenges, right? We expose our content earlier on, and sometimes we get feedback that's not great. We thought we have a great idea, and it's not. So it's a challenge for a lot of us coming from different parts of the industry to see that kind of feedback immediate. But in a way, it makes it better. And having the community with us along the way is what's making this project so great.
And it's not always reactive. A lot of times when you see that feedback, you have to run it through the lens of what information our backers have. And you realize, okay, they're saying that because they have half the picture right now. We haven't spoken about these other systems yet that are going to color what they're seeing right now. So you always have to run it through a filter. You always have to run it through this process and go, okay, how applicable is this feedback at this moment? And oftentimes it's very applicable, and you're like, okay, let's have a meeting. And other times you're like, okay, that's what they're saying now, but we know in 6 months when they see this other stuff in addition to it, they'll understand what it is that we're trying to do.
Sometimes the feedback are absolutely terrible. I'm just gonna say that.
I'll tell you what though, like when you work in like a customer support role or player relations role, a lot of the times, many of you may have worked in call centers at some point. There's a go-to saying which is like, oh, we'll take your feedback. Thanks for letting us know. We'll make sure it's sent to the appropriate party. And a lot of the times that means into a recycle bin or whatever, and it doesn't go anywhere.
The views and opinions expressed by Tyler Wicken do not represent those of Cloud Imperium Games.
No. I'm talking about other places. At CIG, it's actually insanely different. The amount of feedback reports, sentiment reports, feedback for a ship or for a feature or for a mechanic that we have to write and go through is absurd. We showed a list of the platforms that we communicate on. then that's not everything that we use just to monitor for sentiment and for mood and for reaction and stuff. And we have to be on top of it because there are phone calls at like 2:30 in the morning, and not from like the head of community, but from like the CEO. Chris Roberts will call at 2 in the morning and be like, "Hey, the Spectrum post, I linked it to you. Can you click page 37, look 3 down? What does he mean?" And I'm just like, "It's Saturday, Chris. Like, what's going on?" So it's
And you've dropped, because you're sleeping, you've dropped your phone, and it's now under your bed, and you're like, hold on, I'll check it, Chris. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, so it's the amount of feedback that we deliver and the amount of feedback that we sift through is crazy. So sometimes when somebody gives you feedback and we say to them, "Hey, that's great, we'll pass it on to the team," that seems like such a short statement that is really covering an absolutely incredible, mound of feedback that goes back and forth, data. So.
Yeah, and something even to go off that is,
Scared me.
you're too easy to scare. Like, I can walk up behind his desk at the office, and he'll just jump out of it from being oblivious.
on.
Yeah. Just a concept that, at least how I've initially learned of drilling down on feedback, where you're going to get a report on an issue. So I think, what was it, 2.3 or 2.4, some of the missile commander eras of the game's life cycle so far.
Don't bring that up.
Where... Yeah, but it's just taking an issue where it's like, okay, there's enough general feedback to say this is the problem, but really taking the time internally to then drill down through that set of systems of, well, okay, are the missiles broken because signature lock is in a good place right now, or is it broken because of lifespan on missile, because of radius of an explosion, all of these different points where the balance and the gameplay can change wildly. So it's not just taking that initial reaction of missiles feel bad, but finding out why the missiles feel bad, what are the best approaches to make missiles feel good. We're doing a lot of that with 3.0, coming up with our turret gameplay, where manned turrets have not been a fun thing to use on our ships. We have them on a ton of our ships, but we've needed to put in a lot of work to really get that to be an entertaining thing for someone to want to jump in and be like, I'm crewing your turret, I've got this gunner spot. So.
Which is a good time to plug that we just published a whole article about the future of turrets today on the website before we drove down here. So.
The future of turrets. Sorry.
What were we trying to say, Ben?
You kind of have this, I think maybe we get this sense that, we take your feedback, we immediately act on it, that sort of thing. And you come into that old sense of a camel is a horse designed by committee. How are we separate from that? And the answer is that we still have. Chris explains this much better than I can, but we still have that very singular vision that he has.
Oh yeah.
But he thinks of it as, wait a minute, now I have 1 million people who are like essentially the same things I do. They grew up loving all exactly the same things. They want essentially the same finished product. And they have ideas too, and he reaches out for that,
yes.
Which is, I think that's the Star Citizen story at its heart.
Yeah, Chris has incredibly strong opinions about how he wants things to happen, but at the same time, we've seen him, take feedback and go, okay, no, this is a good idea. We should start working on this and stuff like that. It's something I've never seen. You don't ever see anywhere else, because by the time you're introduced to most games, by the time the communities start for most games, the game is practically finished at this point. So it's one of the unique challenges and one of the absolute strengths of Star Citizen as a project, is that we have to provide all this information while we're still figuring it out, but we get the feedback while we're still figuring it out too. So, all right. So final thoughts. In summary, our success comes from players being able to share in the experience. We strive to channel and organize a large amount of feedback that the community can provide, and of course we involve the fans in every step of the way. The journey can be just as fulfilling as the final product, but the final product's going to be pretty cool. All right, so now that's it for our presentation. Thank you for watching. We have microphones on both sides of the stage here. If you have questions or comments or concerns for any of the panelists here. If it's about flight balance, I direct you to
Ben? No. Matt?
All right, we'll just go back and forth here. We'll go ahead and start on this side here with Purdue. Hi, Purdue.
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
What's going on?
Hello.
My name is Pete, and I just want to say thanks so much for creating the game of our dreams. But I've got a concern.
Okay.
And this is, it's just one of the things that I've kind of noticed. I'm invested $200, so I'm not as deep in as some.
Deeper than you are in most games, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. And that's the point, is that, this is a passion project. I want to support it. Very concerned with feature creep and how that is kind of distracting from core gameplay improvement, and just the deadlines kind of keep rolling by. And what are we doing to kind of keep the train on the tracks, so to speak, rather than kind of, expanding, and then the concern is that the game dries up.
Who wants it?
I actually have a counter question, because I receive a lot of, like, every time I'm in Twitch chat.
Right.
I troll half the time.
That's true.
But I do get that question quite a bit, and I ask them this one question: What is feature creep to you?
Well, I mean, if you want specifics, the face cam thing was kind of the flagship.
That was announced as a
Long
target
time
goal
ago.
back in, I think,
So a
2012.
lot of the things that we show, I think a lot of the backers, I tend to notice in the community, view Star Citizen not as a whole, but like, I like this aspect of Star Citizen.
Right.
And why aren't they working on this thing that I want?
Right.
And then there are other backers who are like, I want this part of it, and they're working on it, so they're fine, right? But the thing is, like, if you look at kind of the past ATVs that we've done, and a lot of people, they might call it feature creep.
Right.
But the thing is, those are aspects of the game that we need to get you the Star Citizen gameplay that you want. I had a conversation yesterday with a backer, and I told him, what would you want to be? He's like, oh, I want to be an outlaw. I was like, okay, that's cool. We could do the I don't want to say cop out, but we can do the easy route and say, like, oh, he's a bad guy and he's got like a red marker on his head and you got to shoot him. Like, we could do that, right? But then that wouldn't be the gameplay that Star Citizen is, right? We want there to be depth with the characters. We want them to be motivation, right?
Right.
And then, which leads to like questions like, okay, then are there drugs, smuggling, and stuff like? So there are these little things, and they might look like little switches.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need that switch. That you might look at that way, but then you'll be like, but I want this immersive gameplay. But then to have that immersive gameplay, you need all those switches to turn on at the same time.
Sure.
And so I do get the feature creep thing,
Yeah.
but then a lot of time I reply in saying that those little things that you might feel like it is feature creep when you just look at it as a whole, but when you look at the entire picture, it's like looking at a thumbnail or looking at a finger.
Right.
I might not need this finger, right? But the thing is, the whole body, if you remove a thumb or like the big toe of your foot, you start to walk weird. So we need all these little parts.
Yeah.
It's also important to remember that when in a normal game development cycle, the phase that we're in right now is generally behind closed doors, behind a curtain.
Yes.
So a lot of the successes and failures that we are exposed to the public with, they are normally invisible, but they are normal, and they're part of the usual iteration that goes into developing a game.
Right.
When you play a game like Overwatch, and before the match you shoot the bowl of popcorn, and the popcorn pops out and has physics. Well, it's just like there's just little things that you can add to a game, things that just happen throughout the development cycle that you're generally not exposed to. And this is it's a double-edged sword with being open for development.
Sure.
And this is a perfect example of it, is that when they see a hurdle that we approach, normal game development, you don't always jump over the hurdle. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to find a creative way around it. And these are the challenges that we just constantly have to address, but now we're in the public eye.
Yeah. Well, I
would
appreciate
also-
your. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Do you want to spend too much time on the one question? Because we do have.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for the question.
All right.
Hey.
So I'm going to a similar thought of him at a little bit different angle. Obviously, because we've talked about this, because the community's been involved from the beginning, it gives a perception, at least for me, Star Citizen's taken forever, okay, to develop it. But I recognize that's a perception because we've seen you from day one. Typically, you don't see it till they're ready to market it. But you guys have worked on other games. What's reality? Is Star Citizen going on the same pace as a typical game? You think it's going faster, or do you think it realistically is going slower because you're taking a different approach?
I'd say par for the course, especially considering the scope of what we're doing. If we were just trying to make another, action FPS game, sure, we probably could have made it faster, but we're not trying to do that. We're trying to make this grand, ambitious MMO. We're trying to push networking technology. We're trying to push in-game, object detail, in-game object interactions, making things so much more tactile than really any other games try to do. So. Yeah. yeah, we're going to hit delays, we're going to hit challenges, but we're hitting those delays because we're attempting something grand, not because we're attempting something conventional.
One of the things that we constantly hear is you've been working on this for 3 years, you've been working on this for 4 years, you've been working on this for 5 years. The conceit is that all of those years are equal somehow, and they're not. The first year was 30 or 40 people in one office. You know, we're building desks and buying office chairs.
When I started, we were in a closet with no air conditioning.
Yeah,
We were in a house in downtown Austin. People were working in the basement. There was not enough room for more desks, so we had desks set up in the hallways. Like we've definitely grown up.
Yeah, the first year is not equal to the 5th year with 400 people in 5 offices around the world. This is supposed to grow exponentially. And that's why when people are like, oh, you spent this much time, it's like, it's a scale. There's an odd curve scale. I'm not a math person. I don't know what the actual terminology
You're doing great.
is. But they're not equal. They're not equal. But I came from Blizzard before. This is right along where I think we should be. And again, if you're doing something that's truly never been done before, and in a way that's never been used to do it, you don't have an instruction manual. How do you know how long that's going to take? If you're truly doing something unique that's never been done, how do you know how long it's going to take?
I mean, and let me say that one of the big differences between Star Citizen and another project in that regard is I've been involved in various Wing Commander projects over the years, and all the projects have the same problem. The difference is that I worked on Wing Commander Arena for Xbox Live, and just one day we came in and okay, we're not going to do the single player anymore. No one ever knows that we built out this single-player campaign that didn't get finished because they didn't see it.
It's the same thing that comes back to the game development pipeline that where we're operating in is generally not exposed to the public. We can keep going back to that. But I mean, that really is the truth of it. The amount of games that have delays, but not just delays, the amount of games that get canceled. I mean, I've worked at studios where we've spent, like, not me specifically, but my team had been working on a game for 7 years, and people don't know about it.
Yeah.
And it's never coming out. And so it's like I would say we're par for the course, and we're doing great.
I mean, to give you some sort of like factual examples, for instance, I'm in communication with about 2 character artists and 3 other technical artists in different game companies, and I was going to swear again.
Why? That wasn't
We
even an
break
opportunity to
bread over alcoholic beverages once in a while, but then I hear a lot of different things, like company, let's name it D, doesn't mean anything. They told me that they release a game every 1.5 years, and the method of how they do that is they use an already existing engine, which is number 1. They don't change any part of it. They might innovate maybe about 5%, right? They use all the animations that are available. They remove every feature. I spoke this in Bar Citizen yesterday. They remove a feature of the idea every 4 days. So the game just gets trimmed. The fat gets getting trimmed. So it's the core mechanics. No multiplayer makes things a lot faster for the game. So there's a lot of these things, and they take a lot of shortcuts to release product out. And also that company happens to have a publisher. So the publishers will be like, stop, whatever, release. No, right? And a lot of the times, the technical artists will tell me that a lot of the times the games that ship are not the game that they initially thought it was going to be, and it eventually became that because of a lot of the time crunch thing, right? And I also know developers who work at company P, and they'll spend about, like Tyler said, 7-8 years. Like, for instance, for Blizzard, Titan, which is now Overwatch, was in development.
That's what I was actually referencing.
Yeah, was in development for, was it 7 years, 7-8 years?
Yeah.
Which became Overwatch, and they needed an additional year or 2 or 2.
2 on top of it, yeah.
Yeah, to make Overwatch, so which is like, 10 years. But Overwatch originally was supposed to be like a, what can I say?
MMO.
No
An
spoilers.
MMO. Yeah, no. Well, it's not really, okay, but it was supposed to be an MMO, but then it became a shooter, so it's just like,
All right, well,
yeah.
we have a time, so I want to get as many questions.
With
Sorry.
11 questions and 11 minutes
Thank you.
left, so we have to speed round.
I hope
next
that was
one.
something.
All right, I'm so sorry about that.
Okay. You're on the line, I can't see you. Hello.
Hi. I have 2 questions. The first one is pretty short. The second one is a follow-up to the first one. Question 1. Ben, I think you said at some point this game could not have been created through a traditional publisher developer model because nobody wants space games. That sentence kind of surprised me. So I wanted to ask, is this a trend? And how bad is it? And do you think the industry is likely to learn from the success of Star Citizen in that regard?
I didn't catch the last part.
Do you think the industry is changing because of the trends? The trends are changing.
I would say the industry itself is not changing, but the industry is parasitic in a sense. You know, if we make it big, everybody else will try the same thing. But you know, at the time we were going and we were pitching and we were trying to do, we want to do a new Wing Commander, we want to do a new Wing Commander, we want to do Star Citizen. Everybody said, no, FPSs are big right now, or MOBAs are big right now. That's what we're going to put our money into. The publisher system backs resources that they know will win. So yes, I think, I mean, we've seen that already with a lot more interest in space games over the last few years since we started this.
Call of Duty going to outer space last year.
It used to be about zombies, now space is back.
Yes. So I think the more we raise the space flag and they look at us and say, oh, they made all this money, they made this look easy, we will see more and more space games.
You have a second one?
There's no need for a second question anymore.
Okay,
Great.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi guys, I backed a few years ago and I just check in every now and then, so my apologies if this has already been answered someplace. I love the immersion that you guys are trying to build. Are you guys concerned at all, or are you planning for someone who might feel overwhelmed with having a button for gear and a button for the wings and a button for the cockpit hatch and that type of thing? And then also just really quick, VR, good, bad, or nice to have?
Yeah. As far as the complicated stuff goes, in 3.0, that's coming out very soon, with item 2.0, yes, you can press every individual button, but there's also hotkeys. Like instead of opening your ladder and climbing in and opening your canopy and powering it on and turning it on and lifting off, you can just press F5. So there's ways around that. As far as your VR question goes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is something that we do want to do. It's just about priority. And about resources.
Yeah, it's when you're developing right now, we're developing, if this is everybody in the game community, VR is these couple of people, you know, here in the front row still. As popular as VR is, it's still just these couple of people. So we have to develop for
They have megaphones.
everybody in the room first, and then we can start focusing on that stuff. So it's just we're not there yet.
But we will be.
As for the complexity, you know, we get this every so often. Why isn't there a tutorial? Why isn't this explained better? We're getting to the point with 3.0 where we can do tutorials that will last. And until now, everything was changing with every single build. But I know the game support folks have been putting all sorts of effort into making these
new
web
player
tutorials
experience.
that are going to new player experience. Yeah, we're finally getting to the point where we can kind of focus on that. As for the complexity of it in general, I mean, I think the great challenge for any game is, you know, it should be very, very deep, but also easy to pick up and play. And we've built the deep, and now we're working on the easy part.
No.
Thank you. Next.
All right, guys, first off, thank you for all the work you do, guys. We really appreciate it as a community.
You're welcome.
I wanted to forego my question and let Chad ask a question. So I did ask, and the one I liked best, Cypherfan asked, can you guys address any planned features that you'd like to bring to the game that relate to integration with Twitch and possibly other platforms?
We were just talking about this in the car on the way here today. We've got lots of ideas. It's just unfortunately nothing concrete at the moment.
Yes.
We have a great relationship with Twitch. Our representative, Brant helping us to get the panel. Is Brant here? You know, well, he's great anyway.
So it's not that great.
No, we went to the Twitch headquarters in March, and there was a lot of discussion about different types of integration, not just with the game, obviously, but fun things we can do with Spectrum. And I'm sure we'll have more information about that later.
And of course, through our partnership with Lumberyard, and Lumberyard Engine has a bunch of Twitch stuff that they're currently adding to the engine. So lots of discussions, nothing that we can speak definitively on just yet.
But
Well, I
with
mean, we do have
Lumberyard,
a
we
news
couldn't be in a
van.
better position than
Yeah, we got a
with regards to Twitch.
an
Yeah,
Amazon, Twitch, Star Citizen family.
Yep. Next.
Hi.
Hello.
I am one of the very few people in this room who is not familiar with this project. Congratulations, it looks awesome.
Hello, I'm Jared.
I'm very curious to know, guys, like if you have any sort of toxicity in your community and how you deal with it, or whenever you show anything to the backers and they don't like it at all, how do you manage the process of that feedback? Do you ever give any explanations? How much time do you spend with that? Those sort of things.
Probably the biggest challenge, and any one of you can feel free to correct me if you don't agree, but the biggest challenge we have with running a live environment in the middle of game development, not spending years and then releasing a game, we're actually running the environment while we're building the game, is education, is re-educating our backers, our fans, on why this is operating so different than everything else. I mean, Fallout 4 didn't exist until it did, and then it was out in stores 6 months later. Remember, we were all like, oh my gosh, they just announced Fallout 4, and then 6 months later it was in the store. People are used to having a very short awareness of a project from the moment they discover its existence to the point where they play it. Because we went the crowdfunded route, because we started with a guy and an idea and a couple partners, we were at the very beginning of this when we announced to the world. So the trip has been much longer as far as perception, and that can mean that people get grouchy sometimes. People get their patience begins to wear thin and whatnot. But ultimately, it's a matter of education. It's why we do 15 to 18 shows every month. It's why we showcase every aspect of the behind-the-scenes stuff that we can, from the writers to the programmers to the QA. We used to have a segment on QA where they just showcased the bugs that they were showing in Witch Glitch, and just laughing at the craziness that it drove them to.
Yeah.
It's all education. Education is how you beat that. And whenever I find that the folks who have lost their patience, the folks that are at their end, it's almost always either somebody who's very new to the project, they haven't been here for us to educate them very long, or it's somebody who's been here, for very long, and it's a long time because they're not accustomed to knowing and following a project for this long from the beginning. So challenges abound, but education is the answer.
I'd also like to add, I'd rather have a backer who's frustrated or angry than someone who doesn't care. The fact that they're toxic means that they're still here and they care, that their passion
them toxic.
Well, yeah, I agree. No. I think it's just about, one of the things in community management that you do is you have to see past the caps lock and kind of figure out what their intentions are and where their feedback is coming from, because at the root of it, there's intentions there that are beneficial to the game, and through that process, you can teach them to be more constructive. And generally, a lot of the times when you have somebody who, you would call toxic, a lot of the times when you actually communicate with them and engage with them, they end up being a beneficial member of your community, because they're clearly passionate. It's just
I would
channeling
say
it.
I have never met a backer who was more frustrated about things than people on the team. We all care very, very deeply about this, and when things are delayed and things aren't working and some design idea doesn't come out the way we're expecting, nobody is harder on us than ourselves.
Yeah.
I made a joke I wouldn't shave until our next patch. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are at time, but I'm not seeing a signal or anything. So
We got the 5 minute minute ago.
So what?
We got time for one more.
All right, cool.
Let's do speed round.
Hi, as someone who's also working on a space game on a much smaller team, I'm very curious how you let the open feedback process drive your technical milestones, or if you do at all.
Not as much, just because so Sean Tracy, our tech director, because he's been with the project for so long, those guys, they have a pretty clear idea on some of the things that we're needing to build out. So like getting our upcoming planet tech working, getting the space war tech working, a lot of our challenges with just large ships, object containers, getting our grid system to actually work well with itself. So they have sort of that high-level idea on some of the things that are needed, and it's really just, we've got to get some facsimile of this implemented, iterated, and really start working with it, because a lot of those things are the newer technologies that we don't really have a clean example to look at for another game. So that stuff's a little bit harder to do the back and forth on. initially until now, like, okay, we've started showing those planets over the past couple of years, like at our different live streams. So it's still trying to get that new tech to you guys as soon as we can. But there's still just some challenges where it's like knowing what we've got to build in the first place.
Yeah, we don't just say, what do you guys want? Like, we have a general path, and then we show it, and then we get feedback, adjust course. But then that original path is always planned ahead. Yeah.
All right, guys, well, that's it for time. Thank you so much for being here. We will be out front if you have any additional questions. We'll hang out. And
Can I have one very quick question? Please? I've been waiting a long time.
Yes.
Guys, 07 gentlemen, thank you for doing a great game. I'm here from the Smiling Dog Crew, the most feared group in the galaxy, and we just got one question for you. What are you going to do about Lord Sundank, our fearless leader?
Who?
And the second question, do you like nipples?
The second question was what?
Do you like nipples?
Do I like nickels?
Nipples with a P. That's from
Pickles.
chat.
No.
He clearly has no answer. Thank you for answering my question, guys. We will gank your universe. Thank you.
Great way to end the
Guys,
panel.
thank you.